Here's the question. How do you make the impossible possible? Simple. Remove the I am, the ego. Now, how do you step into that newfound possibility? With a series of small intentional steps. Never forget, the greatest among us started from humble beginnings. But to truly unlock your potential, realize you're here for something greater. If you're yearning for more than just a good life, let's take that small step together to reach greatness. Welcome to the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, where we're talking to those who have gone from mediocrity to motivated, overlooked to overachieving, forgettable to unforgettable. Are you ready? Let's go. This is the Greatness from Small Beginnings podcast, which is Sic Parva Magna. If you want to look it up, that is one of my favorite. I saw that on a movie. I just had to have it as my title. Greatness from Small Beginnings, where we go when we try to discover not just the small beginnings, but what someone is doing in regard to the greatness that they've been given. Of course, any of you that know me know that that's given by God, and that is part of the equation of what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to be. So today, and for the next several, I'm going to have some of my boys on. This is Jason. He's my second son. Very proud of him. And he's got some mic drops today, I'm pretty sure, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, of course. All right. So that being said, I always like to start with this. What is your definition as you live it out? And again, there's, we as people, we're not always disciplined and whatever, but what's your definition that you would say to somebody that you meet on a day-to-day basis, one of your subcontractors, somebody, if they're struggling with something in their life and the subject comes up, what do you tell them? What is greatness to you?
Well, if they're struggling, the number one thing that I always point to is you just got to keep showing up. If you keep showing up, most of your problems they'll end up solving themselves. But as far as greatness, I would say greatness would be the pursuit of our best, the best we can give, the best we can do. Everybody has a personality, and so we're not super disciplined all the time at everything with the best skills, but you have to know where you're going, and some of that has to be step by step. Some of it's going to be really big steps, and some of it's going to be remedial over and over.
Yeah.
Small steps.
And perhaps over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Right?
It's whatever people tell you about the whole business deal and life, it's not quite what it makes it look like on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. To define greatness, best not to go to Instagram.
I would say that's probably pretty good.
Although there are some that, give good points, right?
Yeah.
But those that give the best points, in my opinion, are those that say, yeah, I kind of had the struggle, and this is kind of one of the tools I used, or the way I worked through it, or whatever.
This is how I do it.
This is how I do it.
Day.
Yeah, maybe day to day, maybe hour to hour.
Yep.
Sometimes it's an hourly thing. So that being said, what's the biggest, maybe not the biggest. I mean, this is not share your junk on the podcast, but what's something that you struggle with that in that same conversation you could have with somebody and they're like, well, I'm dealing with this, and you give them that encouraging word that you got to keep showing up. What's your thing that you struggle with to say, Joe Smith, whatever his name is, hey, here's my issue.
I struggle with consistency. I'm not only do I not like consistency, I don't like planning. And so that's a tough issue for me to overcome on an almost daily basis. I don't like working out. I need to work out. I don't like doing paperwork. I have to do paperwork. And so I find every reason to not do those things. But the reality is the
Hmm.
longer I put them off every single time, the worse it is for me. Every time. It's, you can procrastinate, like you feel like you're, I'll do it tomorrow or later this afternoon, then the afternoon gets filled up and it doesn't work. And so, I mean, I struggle with it, and that this year has been kind of a push towards consistency. I have to do something consistently. I really struggle with anything that is a daily task that I have to do. Literally taking vitamins is probably one of the hardest things in the world for me, because it's every day I have to do this.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. And how long does that take?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And you're going to drink the water anyway.
Yep.
Right? Or whatever it is you're drinking.
Yeah.
And you take once a week or whatever to kind of divide up the various vitamins you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, that's not even that hard. But I agree with you that taking the vitamins, like at night before I go to bed, that's when I do it. And I'm like, I just don't want to.
Not doing it.
But then I have to go back to, well, I'm going to drink the water anyway, because I sleep better if I drink at least a half a bottle of water, if not the whole thing. And that's one way I do it, is I drink at least 3/4 of a bottle of water when I take my vitamins. So, okay, fine. I'm going to drink the water anyway.
Yep.
Right. So you struggle with that. Let's hone in on that one piece. So what other things in your life then are kind of like that? Let's just be transparent for a minute with the listeners and say, these are the things that, because the struggle is real, if we can overcome those together, here you're putting it out into the universe, right? Again, not to share all your dirty laundry, but what other things from a day-to-day basis, if you did them, would make your life better?
Taking the trash out of the truck every day. That's a big thing. That's a big discipline thing, because you're going to stop for fuel once a day for sure. I just got my Google report for the last month, and it said I drove 8,300 miles last month.
Ooh.
And that, I would consider that a fairly average month for me. Taking the trash out of the truck, preparing the daughter's stuff for the next day prior to running out the door. So it's a procrastination deal, and it's one of those things where if I've started working on it with Kimber, my oldest daughter, that we don't procrastinate as a household. We just have to say that we don't procrastinate. So if I'm telling someone that I don't procrastinate and we as a family don't procrastinate, then I have to do what I really don't want to do, and I have to put myself in the hot seat.
Yeah. So it comes back to, as you know, I've been thinking a lot about core values, a lot over the last year and a half or so. And it comes down to, okay, it's more standards really, but the standards are based on the values. Like, what do we care? Sure. What do we care about the most?
Yeah.
Right? So you mentioned that, so let's be clear with the listeners, you're a contractor, and what do you do?
Roofing, siding, windows, residential exteriors mostly.
Residential exteriors. And you have a crew, you have people, what do you?
So it's me. I do all the selling and the managing of the jobs. I have a large stable of really, really good tradespeople, subcontractors that I've known for most of them several years. And we have a long-standing relationship of trying to work together and everybody make it out where we're all pushing in the right direction.
Right. Okay. So would you say that your word for the year is consistency? Is that what you said? At least that's your push for the year. I don't know if that's your word for the year. I don't want to put the word in your mouth, but what does that matter? What does that mean to them?
So they know, so relationships are important. They're really important to me. And
is that natural for you?
to care about those relationships?
It's more natural to care about the relationships than it is to care about the dollars and cents.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right.
And so a lot of times, I've put myself in business situations where I'm not walking out with barely anything, but everyone's taken care of.
Hmm.
And those guys know, every single guy that works for me that has any sort of history with me knows that when I say, hey, you're starting this day, we're doing this, and we're going to completion.
Mhm.
We're all walking with something. We might not be walking with what we want, but we're all going to make it out, and we're not going to sever the relationship because of the
Mhm.
difficulties in between.
We're not going to lose.
Yes.
So to speak.
Yeah.
We're here to gain.
Yeah.
Good. So the consistency, the standard of consistency, the standard of, would you say in your household, we don't procrastinate?
Yep.
Okay. By the way, I apologize for that. That came through me.
Oh,
I wouldn't say I'm a master at it, because I've been pounding on it and chiseling at it for decades.
Mhm.
But my dad was.
yeah.
And if he was sitting right here, he would probably smile and tell some quippy, silly joke about it. But nonetheless, he would agree.
Yeah.
He would agree that he procrastinated and that he was not a great example of not putting things off. Like, he did that a lot.
Yeah. Get up and do it now.
Yeah, get up and do it now. He wasn't the greatest example of that, but he was example of a lot of other good things.
Oh, yeah.
He did show up. He was present.
Mm-hmm.
For me, he broke the bonds of fatherlessness in his own life, in his own past,
Mhm.
for generations. And for me, he broke that.
Mhm.
So that's pretty cool that he did that. But we have work to do based on what he's left behind, which
Yeah.
is procrastination. So
Mhm.
it comes through, I don't know if it comes through fully through the bloodline or what, or maybe the example.
Maybe it's not hereditary.
Maybe it's not hereditary. I don't know, but it does feel somewhat that way at times, right?
Mm-hmm. It sure does.
And you can blame it on me, I suppose, but if you're going to improve, that's probably not the best pathway.
Yeah.
So what about when you're not consistent, and when the people in your life, when you procrastinate, talking about blame,
Mhm.
what are they like? How do you manage that side of it, from the standpoint of the family is in a bad day, right?
Mhm.
And they've procrastinated. You as a unit have procrastinated.
Mhm.
What's your pathway out? What's your next move?
Deep breath. First thing is the deep breath. The next thing is the highest priority to lowest priority, and sometimes that list gets cut 90%.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as far as if we did procrastinate and we didn't get everything ready, and we're not ready to roll the next day, and we can't get in the truck and go, then it doesn't help to lean on people heavily with, the emotional raising the voice and getting after them. But what does help is, okay, what are the big things we have to do? And let's look at one right now, whether it's, brushing the teeth or putting the water bottle in the backpack or getting the snow clothes ready. Because every day the younger one comes home and she's got all of her snow clothes in her bag and they're completely soaked from playing on the playground.
Mhm.
So you have to take them out and dry them at night, or you're going to have to put a whole new set in there.
Right. Okay.
And we're really
Like snow clothes. Where do you live?
South Dakota.
South Dakota. And it's mighty snowy and mighty cold.
Mhm.
All right. So snow clothes are a thing every day.
Every day.
Every day in the winter. Sure.
Yep. And if you forget, I've forgotten a coat before for a kid. Don't ask me how that happens. But I had to drive 60 miles, 30 back to the house, 30 back to the school to bring her snow coat, or an actual coat, so she could go outside.
Oh man, there's a price to be paid for. I don't know. Let's use the words we've been using. Like, did you procrastinate the night before?
Lack of preparation.
Yeah, lack of preparation and lack of consistency, doing the same thing,
Yep.
same way every time.
Yep.
And I honestly get a little bit bored
Yeah.
with doing the same thing the same way all the time.
Well, I know for sure that when you start talking in terms of greatness and success and we're going here and this is how we're doing it and we're gonna do all these things. Okay, so that's really great, and people want to look at the high points of along the way of this is a big milestone and that's a big milestone. It literally is none of those things. It's all of the super boring stuff every time. That's what makes the difference. That's what is going to get you there.
I was just reading an article earlier that the guy is a solopreneur. Okay, kind of like you. Like you have subs and you have people, but they're not on your payroll. You hire the people with a similar standard, and then hopefully they pull it off, right? But they're not your employees for you to train from A to Z. And so when you have a bigger organization, then you can afford the person to do the paperwork, perhaps, and you're not there, and maybe you won't be there. Maybe you're in a better positionally, you're better to do it exactly like you're doing it, right? But his point was that we have to, and then I related that back to an article I read by John Maxwell, who said that when I start something new, he's got a massive organization, but he didn't always have that. And he got in the habit of learning things to the point of just beyond adequate. Like get yourself in there and learn how to do it, learn how to be efficient at it, learn enough, so that you could do it if you needed to, straight through. And then, when you pass it off, that if they run into a snag, then you actually can answer their questions. Yeah. At least to some degree. Yep. And I thought that was really good of him. He's in an organization that's got multifaceted and whatever. And he said, when I built this thing, and he gave it an example, I had to go in and learn it myself because it was new. And then once I learned it, then I could pass it off. But now managing it from a distance, now I know. Now I know what I'm looking at. And he said it wasn't in my skill set, which is what I've learned from that too, is that I have to live sometimes above my own capacity, which is what, when we tend towards procrastination, that's what we actually have to do, is live above our capacity and see the why behind it. Yeah. What's your biggest why, would you say, in life in general? Let's go deep real quick.
There's a biblical call to leave a legacy. That's that's a really important thing that you don't. It's really disheartening to look at our culture as of today and see that most people they're living for, might not just be living for themselves, but they're living for comfort, and they're living for enjoyment and relaxation. And I don't know that all of them have worked all that hard to get there. I can't make the judgment about who did and who didn't, but from the outside looking in, it looks an awful lot like people have just given up on, pushing the rock up the hill, whatever hill it looks like for them. As Americans, I feel that our call as Americans is it's different than some of the people in the rest of the world, because we have people that, there's hundreds of thousands of young men who've given up their lives for us, and we're supposed to live a life that is worth them dying for.
Yeah, it's honoring to them.
It's honoring to them. And then the other part of that is the biblical call to legacy is you got to be pushing for something. And I want the best for my daughters, for my nieces, for all of my family. I want we had a gal staying with us, and she was from Uganda, and she asked me, why do you try so hard every day? And I said, it's imperative that we try our hardest at everything we do, because that makes our family better. And then it makes our local community, you know, the 2 neighbors or 3 neighbors or whatever you have, makes them better. And then our town looks really good because, hey, if this guy's moving and shaking over here, and then it's a ripple effect. And if people have given up on that, then you lose the entire purpose of the American experience, like the American experiment. That's what you're losing by not pushing.
Yeah, I also read an article, just a quick article about being better. What does that look like to be better?
I don't know. I mean, I think you need to do stuff you don't want to do every day. You have to. I don't think it's an optional thing. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff that, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'd be happy laying on the couch watching some TV.
Yeah, well, that is, yeah, right. That would be a lot easier, wouldn't it?
It sure would be a lot easier.
Yeah. So what's your stuff you don't want to do? Let's do your next hard. Let's define it as your next hard thing. What do you?
So there's some transitionary stuff in the business that's going to have to take place. I'm going to have to move from one bookkeeper to a different accountant, not because she did anything wrong, but that's hard because that relationship is important to me. Because she's watched me go from couldn't even rub wood and nickels together to what we have now, which is, I mean, something more than zero. And now having to move to the next step that's tough. But this summer I've got 150 miler, 50-mile run, Black Hills 100. And that's a physical goal I'm pushing towards. And then, you know, the family goal is we want to be debt free. We want to be out of, you know, we got to get out of the rat race. And so you have to push towards that one penny at a time. Yeah.
Oh, it feels like one penny at a time, doesn't it?
Well, that's what it is.
It's
It's the same thing as fitness, because when you're doing your fitness stuff, it's like one decision at a time, one meal.
Yep.
Or one non-meal, you know,
Yep.
not going to eat the M&Ms. It's the same thing with, you know, your finances. It's the one small thing you're not going to do.
Okay. So that's the word for the year is consistency. It's kind of in light of procrastination or kind of doing hard things, right?
Yeah.
How does that fit together in your mind if you look out at your year, 2024? How does that fit together? And we might have already hit on it, but just package those together and talk about maybe your ideal week.
So on a work front, what I would call a win for a week is hitting production goals, which production goals, they're kind of nebulous, you know, based on weather and situations and material delays. But if we are close to where we're supposed to be at the end of the week for production, that's a for sure win in the work realm.
Right. Oh yeah.
And I mean, if we're not completely stopped because we don't have the show-stopping item,
right,
whatever it is, whether it's the people or the material or that's a win for that. And then if we stuck to our basically our plan of, hey, we have this going on with the girls and we are doing this for dinner and we're doing that for dinner and this is how this works. If we stick to that, that's a huge win for a week.
Yeah. And what derails you?
So typically it would be something along the lines of, you know, time, the most precious commodity. So it would be something to the effect of, usually the call comes, it's actually coming right now, today, as we're here, where somebody calls and says, hey, this is not what we expected, or something took 3 to 5 times longer than it was supposed to. And that's kind of the way that goes. And so then you're picking up the pieces after that. But the derailing is also a choice too. And I've realized that, because if you did your prior preparation, it's not going to derail you 100%. It's only going to sidetrack it.
Not as bad, right?
Yep.
So contingency plans are important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not 5 and 6 layers deep probably, but
Yeah.
have something in the wings to say, okay, if things blow up in the family, then this is the way we're going to react, and this is what we're going to do instead.
Yep.
And same in the work realm.
Mhm.
Have some contingencies, build those in a little bit, some schedule changes, because they happen almost every week,
Yep.
right? Yeah, if not every week.
Yeah.
And have contingencies. Talk a moment about your faith. And you said take the breath earlier.
Mhm.
Like, how do you react to something going sideways? Yes. And you said take a breath. Is that a spiritual moment, or is that literally prior to the spiritual moment?
That's a strictly physical, physical. So you don't, I mean, everybody says things they don't mean. Everybody says things they don't want to say. But if you can just say, okay, this isn't good, and stop the situation, actually just breathe. And then you can take a look at, okay, what is the best way to respond to this where you're not hurting the person, hurting the situation, slowing the process. And a lot of times that comes down to, well, knowing the person. That's pretty important. But the part of it where you're trying to discern what to do, that's a prayer moment. Give me peace, give me strength. That's the usual ones.
Wisdom.
Yeah, some sort of
A
wisdom.
quick help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. But as far as the spiritual side of things, I mean, when you start talking about how faith intertwines with the rest of our environment, myself, my family, it's really important, because if you don't have a belief system of any sort, people claim they're agnostic or atheist or whatever it is. Well, it's really hard to have that belief system, because then you're basically just a cynical, miserable person.
Yeah.
Well,
living for yourself, so to speak.
Yeah, living for the comfort, living for the
comfort. Yeah.
And then you're going to get what you're going to get, and there's no purpose to why you're getting it, and there's no purpose for why you're going that direction. That's a pretty tough spot to be. And the Christian faith it's not professed by perfect people. It's not practiced by perfect people. And
that's for sure.
It's a tough thing to be in a world where you're attempting to take things with grace and take them in stride and not wreck relationships and families and situations, but at the same time to try to grow in that. That's a pretty how would the internet say? It's an enlightening thing.
Enlightening.
It's enlightening.
You get the energy.
Yeah.
Oh, about the energy.
Positive energy.
Positive energy.
Yeah.
I get a little bit tired of that sometimes, but as you can tell. Well, good. So let's finish out with the question I love asking. So you crawl through this microphone and you crawl down this cord, and you're sitting in the car with somebody listening to this on whatever platform, and you're sitting in the seat next to them, or you're walking down the pathway in the ears of somebody, like they got their earbuds in and they're walking, listening to this. And you are going to disappear in 30 seconds to a minute. And you got one thing you could say to kind of put all this in a nutshell, cap it off, and say, if you remember a thing or two, this is it.
So the first thing is really simple. You don't have to take all the steps all at once. You don't have to eat the entire sandwich in one bite.
Mm.
Literally, the only thing you're doing is taking the next step. That's all you're doing. You don't have to, you have to, Tom Reber, he's a contractor coach. And he says, win the moment. That's all you have to do is you win that one moment at a time.
That's a good way to see it.
And so that's number one, is that you have to win the moment, whatever that looks like for you, whatever your daily agenda looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, you have to set your goals high enough to where it has to be scary enough to where you can't reach it today. There's a lot of talk about attainable goals, and you have to set them low. You don't have to set them low.
Yeah.
You have to set them high enough to where they're hard and where you're going to have to grow, because the growth comes in the discomfort. The growth comes past where you've already gone. So that every step you're moving is one step closer to growing somewhere, whether it's good or bad.
Good. So 2 things. You said 2 things there. A bite at a time, a little at a time, win the moment. Is that right? Is that how he puts it? That's a good one. And then it's about growth, right?
Yeah.
Grow a little.
Yep.
Set big goals that push you, that force you. Good. That is Jason, my second son here, giving you, the audience, the mental pathway to greatness. So we're going to end today with that. And I appreciate that. I think that's a call to action. They know it's a call to action. Here's the additional call to action as I finish every episode. And that is, for all of you, now go be great.